In today's video, we got a new hint that Valve is preparing to launch Steam hardware. After that, let's talk about how Sony just gave Valve a huge break in terms of pricing. And finally, you can now enable multi-frame generation on the Steam Deck, but it is 100% not worth doing. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. I hope you are having a great week playing a ton of video games. Before I jump into the news, this video is sponsored by SquareSpace. SquareSpace wants me to highlight their new feature Design Intelligence, which takes 2 decades of website building expertise and combines it with cutting-edge AI tools. Essentially what it means is if you've got an idea for a website, they've got a tool that will help you build it super quick and super easy. Because of ad deals like this one, I have to send a lot of invoices, and Squarespace makes it so easy to not only generate an invoice, but send it out and track the payment. So you can always make sure you're getting paid for your work. And their excellent visual design tools go top down from the entire website down to the invoice itself. So you can get a consistent brand identity across every piece of your platform, so you look professional to brands that might want to work with you or sponsor your YouTube channel. Squarespace almost feels too good to be true with how easy it is to use, but how good your website looks when you use it. So when you're ready to try Squarespace, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/deckready for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Huge shout out once again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and huge shout out to you for dealing with sponsors. Ad rates are just so low, I've got to do it. So I really appreciate all the support from everyone involved. But with the intro out of the way, let's get into the first news story here and talk about the latest hint that Valve is preparing to release the Steam Machine, the Steam Frame, and the Steam Controller. So the first big hint we got was SteamOS 3.8. I covered that in a video. I went through literally all the patch notes, and then I also reviewed it in a follow-up video, and spoilers, it's a great update. It fixed literally every tiny bug and issue I was having with my SteamOS PC, so that was good because it shows that they're really far along on what they need to do to get SteamOS ready for the Steam Machine. And now a week later, we have yet another hint because this one's related to the Steam Frame, because it was noticed that on the back end of Steam, when you upload your game to be sold on the Steam store, you can now select Android as a supported operating system for your game. And the reason you can do that now is because VR headsets generally use ARM chips, which means they run on a modified version of Android, and Valve put in a ton of work to create the translation layer for Android games to make them work on the Steam Frame, so you don't have to have developers making multiple builds of their game. You still can make frame native versions of your games and also PC VR versions of your games, but if you already have a game built for the Oculus platform, it should work one-to-one thanks to this new translation layer that Valve built for the Steam VR headset, the Steam Frame. I forgot what it was called for a second. I apologize. And the double update we get here is that sadly it's Bradley on Twitter, the best VR leaker in the game related to Steam. He noticed that developers are already making builds of their games that are built with Android for the Steam Frame. So clearly these developers have some info that the Steam Frame is right around the corner, and honestly it just keeps benefiting Valve to wait a little bit longer. They've still got about 3 months to hit that before June release window that I'm still very confident they'll hit. I know people want them to release the controller, but if we only have 3 months to wait, I guess I understand why they're holding it back. And also I'd imagine that they have a lot of Steam machines already packaged with the controllers, and because of the supply chain issues and how expensive everything is, I doubt they want to add another complication into a massive list of complications that they've had piled on top of them by everything that's happening in the video game world right now that clearly is not their fault. So while that might have been on the table at some point, I feel like that ship has sailed, but I think it's also a good sign that we're getting all these updates like SteamOS 3.8 and being able to upload Android games to Steam. Like, it's happening. I know there's still a lot of people out there who have it like dead set in their hearts that the Steam Machine's going to be canceled, that the Steam Frame's going to be canceled as well, and they'll just release the controller. I said when that started popping up that that was just pure doomerism, and don't fall for it. This stuff is happening. They wouldn't be doing all this work on the back end if it wasn't. So everyone just chill, wait, enjoy your Steam Deck while you just sit there and wait for them to announce the Steam Machine's release date and price, and I think everything's going to be just fine. But speaking of the Steam Machine's price, Sony inadvertently just helped Valve, because if you haven't seen, they increased the price of the PlayStation 5 ecosystem once again, and this hit every piece of hardware. The disk drive PS5 went from $550 to $650, the disk drive list PS5 went from $500 to $600, the PS5 Pro went from $700 all the way up to $900, and the PS Portal, which isn't really even a real handheld, you have to stream exclusively to it, went from $200 to $250. So that's a pretty massive price increase across the board, and I can't believe on the console console side at least, we're seeing this generation play out the opposite of how it used to, where like by this point in the PS4's life cycle, that thing was down by half to $200, whereas now we're paying more, or you're paying more if you want to go buy a PS5, I guess, to get the same console that you could have gotten 5 years ago. And if you missed the PS5 Pro and really wanted one, now you're going to be paying $200 more than the initial price, which is a huge disaster. And when it comes to the Steam machine, we know that Sony is scared of Valve. We have Bluepoint Games' old CEO basically spelling it out, that they're not scared of Xbox, they're not scared of Nintendo, they're scared of Valve because, you know, they have a living room console that plays PC games, and not only is online free on the Steam machine, but also Steam sales are just generally a lot better. And also on top of that, you get to carry your games forward forever, right? Like I can play my copy of Left 4 Dead 2 I bought when I was in high school, and any game I buy now, theoretically, I'll be able to play it in 10 years if hardware is still a thing. I'm making a joke. I hope that's the case. I hope hardware is still a thing, but with the way things are shaking out, you just never know these days. And when it comes to the Steam machine's pricing, we know that it's basically going to be the added up cost of the parts if you bought them at the store. So with the store's built-in sort of tax on the MSRP, it's not tax, it's markup, but you know what I'm saying. The store charges more than they pay for the components. And if you add up all the parts, that's what you're probably going to pay. And that kind of puts it in line with the regular PS5's old price, not the PS5 Pro. I see a lot of people saying that it's going to be in line with the PS5 Pro. That just doesn't make sense to me based on the fact that Valve is using old off-the-shelf parts for the APU. They're being conservative with every other piece of this thing, and also it's pretty tiny. So like, you know, I think that it's going to be in line with the regular PS5 because if you look at the specs of all the parts they're using, it's basically a little bit better in some ways than the PS5 and a little bit worse in others. So like, generally speaking, it shakes out to be about the same performance-wise as the PS5. So if you're talking about which one to price it in line with, I would say the PS5 versus the PS5 Pro. I hope I'm right in that guess because the PS5 Pro is now $900, but with the PS5 continuing to climb in price, if Valve can hit the old price of the PS5 or stay somewhere around it, or just generally between the PS5 and PS5 Pro, I think that makes it a lot easier of a pill to swallow. I don't want to say it's good to be in that price range because either way, we're kind of suckers at the end of the day because relatively speaking, it'll look like it's fairly priced, but like generally speaking, we're also paying more for 5-year-old hardware than we would have in past generations. So like it's a wash at the end of the day, I guess. It's just not a good situation. But keeping all of that in mind, at the end of the day, it really is on Valve to justify the price. Like it's not on us to like make concessions for them and say, well, you know, things are more expensive, so I'll accept an inferior product for that price. No, if the price has to go up, it's on Valve to make sure that the software side gives you a little extra bonus. It's on Valve to make sure the GPU drivers are all ironed out to get the best performance possible out of the gate. It's on Valve to test big games on this thing like Crimson Desert taking over Steam. They got to make sure Crimson Desert works out of the gate. And thankfully, unlike a lot of other game publishers or console manufacturers in the gaming industry ecosystem, whatever you want to call it, Valve is generally speaking a good company from that perspective in the sense that they do put in extra work to make sure that they're under promising and over delivering. I think that's exactly what they did with the Steam Deck. And ever since the Steam Deck came out, we keep getting updates for SteamOS that not only give you things like better performance in games, but also better battery life. Like the last Steam Deck update literally increases battery life in standby mode. And we're 4 years past the launch of the Steam Deck. So that is one example that's really strong, in my opinion at least, of Valve making their hardware get better over time instead of staying the same or getting worse and charging the same or more for it. And honestly, I think they've done a really good job compared to all the competition, making sure price increases don't happen. So yeah, I think we're in a good spot. I think the pricing is going to look normal relative to everything else. And if and when the cost of these components comes down over the next few years, if there's any gaming hardware company that's going to actually reduce their price with the falling prices of these components, it's Valve. I don't think you can say that about literally anyone else. So if you're a Valve fan, you're in a good spot. I think things, despite everything bad in the world going on right now, are going to end up fine. And finally, that brings me to the third news story, which is about multi-frame generation. So this is complicated because I know people love frame generation. I know there's a lot of people out there who legitimately don't notice stuttering or input lag. So if you're one of those people, frame generation is a godsend for you because for games like Monster Hunter Wilds or Crimson Desert, it allows you to bump up the graphics settings just just a little bit, and then even the frame rate out at around 30 FPS depending on the game. Now, if a game is really easy to run, it ends up being a much easier experience to play that game from top to bottom, so I definitely see its use. I'm just not a fan of frame generation. I don't like the idea of AI algorithms generating entirely fake frames. I notice stutter. It's my number one issue with gaming. I notice input lag. That's my number two issue with gaming because I play a lot of action games that require high frame rates. So like I'm out on frame generation, but any way you slice it, I don't think multi-frame generation is going to be a benefit for anyone at the end of the day. But if you want to do it, it's now available through this new Decky Loader plugin that allows you to trick your Steam Deck into unlocking DLSS features. When I saw this, I got excited because I thought it was going to unlock DLSS's upscaling on the Steam Deck, but that has not been enabled just yet. The only feature you're really able to use is multi-frame generation, and even Steam Deck HQ, who I've seen recommend frame generation in some cases, says straight up this is not worth using, and I definitely believe that website because I mean just regular frame generation, like if you're running a game at 15 FPS to boost it to 30, you're going to get like at least a full second of input lag. It's a little more acceptable if you're going from 30 to 60. It's a lot more acceptable when you're going from 60 to 120, but if you're going from like 30 to 90, you're going to have input lag. If you're going from 15 to 60, you're going to have a lot of input lag, and input lag just makes the game feel slow, sluggish, muddy, soupy, just on any adjective you can throw at it to make it feel slower. But you know, every time I come down on this stuff, I go on the Steam Deck subreddit and there's people super excited to use it. So I'm not going to yuck your yum. If you're really into the idea of using this stuff, it's really easy to find. Just Google multi-frame generation Steam Deck. It's the first link right there. It shouldn't take long to set up if you've already got Decky figured out. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of frame generation, so I'm extra not a fan of multi-frame generation. I'd prefer developers just optimize their games so that we don't even have to use upscaling, right? Like remember when we didn't have to use upscaling, when if you spent money on PC parts, you generally get a decent experience out of the box with any game you threw at your PC. Like changing the settings used to be so you could get 60 or 30 FPS. And now you have to deal with things like multi-frame generation, frame generation, NVIDIA reflex, upscaling from 360p all the way up to 4K. You have to know so much more stuff about how all these settings work in your games than you did back in the day, and it's just frustrating. I fully understand why some people just default to consoles and then why other people just boot a game up on their Steam Deck or look for verified games and just accept the preset that it gives you out of the box, because when you have limited time and you just want to play video games, removing all that friction is great. But that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.